dear distinguished speaker, dear audience, it's a great pleasure and privilege to moderate a panel with such outstanding experts, practitioners, as well as academics, which will address the issue of smart use and management of water resources. In the light of global challenges, the smart use and the protection of natural resources, especially water, must be a top priority for sustainable development. There are no doubts that enormous efforts will be necessary to ensure this. To meet this challenge, a number of concepts like integrated water resource management got introduced, aimed at the coordinated development and management of water, land, and related resources. In order to maximize the resultant economic and social welfare in an equitable manner, this is our main aim. But before getting deeper into the subject with our speakers, I have the honor and privilege to invite our Honorable Excellency Ambassador Cravinho. Is he already online? Okay, thank you, dear Mr. Ambassador. I have the pleasure to pass over the word for opening address to you.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to join you from Delhi, and thank you for accommodating me in your program. I hope you've had successful work so far. I would like to just address a few ideas for your consideration. The first one of which is to say that, in my view, water sharing will not be a path to peace, but it can be an extremely productive benefit from peace. In other words, I do not believe that the prospect of water sharing on its own is sufficient to promote peace, but I do believe that the creation of a positive dynamic, in this case in South Asia, is one that can lead to water sharing arrangements, and these water sharing arrangements in turn can create optimal conditions for consolidating peace. So I would like to put the accent on that process. Now, South Asia, as you're all very much aware, it has a large amount of international river basins. These have not so far been sufficient to bring the peoples, or rather to bring the states of this region together. However, they are bound together in destiny by the existence of these river basins. And the current circumstances, or the way that we look at what is likely to happen in South Asia over the next few years, is going to accentuate the importance of these river basins for various reasons. In particular, starting with the existence of the Himalayas, which are truly considered to be the world's water tower, and the challenges of global climate change, in particular global warming and the melting of glacial lakes and so on. This runs the risk of uniting the countries of this region in tragedy, because in fact we are facing the prospect of severe disruptions resulting from melting of glacial lakes and from other climate-related catastrophes, all connected to the river basins. One would hope that this would provide an incentive to work closely together. In practice, it has not done so, and unfortunately, as we have seen in the case of India and Bangladesh, it has been extremely difficult to find a common basis from which to work. In Europe, of course, our experience has been positive after many centuries in which it was negative. I think we must always bear that in mind, As a Portuguese, I am proud of what has been achieved by my country and Spain. And in other European contexts, we find similarly interesting and in fact very inspiring examples, the Danube, the Rhine, and so on. In this region, we are unlikely to see in the near future the same kind of developments. Institutional cooperation in the context of the regional organization that exists here, the SARC, is still very much at an incipient stage. And to return to what I mentioned at the beginning, I believe that cooperation will fructify when there is a peaceful dynamic, rather than being the cause of a peaceful dynamic. The impact of climate change in this region can be very, very severe, and all of the predictions are rather grim in this regard. However, so far, this has not been sufficient compulsion to promote cooperation, perhaps because the perception of vulnerability is really not sufficiently high in the minds of policymakers and decision makers. Nevertheless, I would believe that in the European Union, as European Union and as entities within the European Union, we should stand prepared to share our experiences. Sharing our experiences does not mean that we should say that here in South Asia, people should do the same thing. It simply means saying we have had historic problems and we have made major strides to solve our historic problems, and this is how we have done it. In other words, it is very useful, I think, to have a certain dose of humility in approaching contexts, political contexts, economic, social contexts, which are actually very diverse from our own, even if on the face of it, the challenge faced regarding river basins may appear to be similar. So cooperation on disaster management is one area in which I think we should stand prepared, even while recognizing that our interlocutors may not have the same standpoint as we do. Of course, in the European Union as an organization which has its very particular DNA, has sought over the years to work with South Asia in joint management of water issues. We continue to do this in a non-impositional manner. In operational terms, we are supporting a number of projects. I'd just like to refer, I don't want to burden you with lists of details of our projects, but there are a couple I think that merit reference. One is the ICMOD, which is the Integrated International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, which is a 5-year program bringing together Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, because China is also part of this wider region of the Himalayas, India, Myanmar, Pakistan, and Nepal. And what it aims to do is support the process of using natural resources in a much more sustainable and efficient way, protecting the environment, particularly protecting the environment from degradation that can make natural disasters more probable. Mountain rural livelihoods is the central focus of this program. This is extremely relevant for the whole of the Himalayan region, and as I mentioned, the Himalayan region covers a number of 8 different countries. So working with the Hindu Kush Himalaya region is a way into the promotion of regional, I wouldn't say regional integration, but the promotion of regional cooperation that is, I believe, non-intrusive because it focuses very much on shared problems, namely the problems facing particularly mountain villages. ICMOD has been a successful project so far. and we're looking forward to the next few years. It's based in Nepal, financed 11 million euro project, and hopefully this experience will allow us then to develop more ever bolder initiatives promoting the joint work of these various countries. Another second relevant project is the High Noon project. India, European Union, and Japanese researchers are joining hands with the aim of assessing the impact of Himalayan glacial retreats and possible changes of the Indian summer monsoons on the distribution of water resources in northern India. It's, I think, addressing very significant long-term problems, but particularly in the Ganges river basin, and trying to develop strategies to cope with changing realities of the water resources there. We're also working with Bhutan and the Global Climate Change Alliance, which is part of our fast-track funding decided at Copenhagen, the Copenhagen Summit on climate change a couple of years ago. Highly appreciated in Bhutan, highly necessary given the risks related to climate change in Bhutan. So I brought to you three concrete examples of the effective contribution of the European Union towards regional dialogue and cooperation. But I would caution that always we need to have with us as well the very clear notion that at the end of the day, diplomatic and political skills are going to be in high demand in order to create the appropriate circumstances for our technical projects to be to have a wide application. So just with those few words of reflection on some of the realities that we looked at from the point of view of Delhi, I would like to thank you very much for the invitation and to wish you excellent exchanges over these 2 days. And in particular, I would like to address a word of thanks to Paulo Casaca for his invitation, and a word of greeting to him across this cyber distance. Thank you.
Dear Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much also from my side and from our panel for this very thoughtful and thoughtful insights in our topic. And also thank you very much for the excellent and comprehensive overview about the programs which are carried out by the European Union. And we are all grateful that you spent some of your valuable time to join and to address our panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In the meantime, I think we have some technical developments here. I will use this occasion and to make an announcement. Thanks to the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, they have an excellent journal. It's called International Reports. And you find all one free copy very close to you. And there's especially one article, Water for South Asia, Security of Supply Requires Regional Cooperation. I think this article matches perfectly the theme of our panel and the whole conference. And this should hopefully catch your attention. So, until everything is set here in the panel, I want to use this occasion again to take the word and to introduce our speakers. First of all, we have Professor Dr. Miroslav Marente. He is Associate Professor in Storage and Hydropower, UNESCO, the Institute for Water Education. Our second speaker is Mr. Robert Fraser. He is Senior Officer by the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. We have his colleague, Ms. Hilary Mozziri, Senior Officer for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, and Mr. Jose Marquez, CEO of INCBIO. And our last presenter is Ms. Professor Hashmi, Assistant Professor, Department of Peace and Conflict Studies, National Defense University in Islamabad, Pakistan. Thank you very much that you found the way to this panel and for your contribution. And it seems that our technical
I'm not very good with okay. It's this one. Okay.
support is on the way. And I will immediately hand over to Professor Marente. So,
Thank
floor
you.
is yours.
Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I will try to polish a little bit hydropower, because in the morning it was a little bit, I will not say attack, but it was shown the dark side of the hydropower. I will try to put it on the sunny side a little bit. And I will start with my presentation with, I will go over to some facts about the hydropower. Then I will show you two projects which are in ongoing. One is the hydropower water footprint connected with the losing of the water by hydropower. And another one is, I think, very interesting topic which is starting now, which is in implementation in the last 2 years, the Hydropower Sustainability Assessment Protocol. And then I will switch from these two topics, which are mostly connected with the large hydropower, to the small hydropower as one environmentally much more friendly solution for the developing world, and also for us in Europe. Okay, if we start with the, it's a little bit problem between Apple and PC. It looks a little bit different, but I hope we will not have the problem. We have here the map of world with the world potential and the current hydropower production. Current hydropower production is blue, and the world potential is the red of the bar, which is red. We can see that development in the North America, Europe, and Australia is nearly finished. But there is a big potential in South America, especially in Africa, and especially in Asia. And we can see, for example, here the South Asia, which have approximately 15% of the potential at the moment, which is in operation. We know that we will have additional increase of our hunger for energy is huge. And we will need more and more energy, and hydropower will be and should be part of this energy business. What are the facts for the hydropower? Most of you know, but just for short explanation, it's a renewable source of energy. Positive points are, it's a fuel is free of charge. It has very high efficiency, higher than most of other possible energies. There is no pollution. We have a very long operational time, more than 50 years. We have power plants which are working more than 100 years, because it's a relatively simple and approved technology with slow aging. It has a low operation and maintenance costs, flexible and very fast in operation, and can cover it's a source which can cover from very small, from 10 kilowatts to above 10,000 megawatts. It also gives us possibility for storing the energy, and most of the cases the hydropower is not only the hydropower project, it's multi-purpose project, which brings also benefits for the others, as for the agriculture, fishers, tourism, etc. Of course, we have also the disadvantages. Everything is not so nice. It's firstly starting with financial, comparatively very high investment costs compared to the other sources of electrical energy. Mostly the places where we can build the hydropower are not where we have also the consumption places. which means we need longer lines for transfer the energy. And plant has normally longer construction and project preparation time. Of course, if we have reservoirs, we have the problems with flooding and on this way disturbing of the using of land for the other purposes connected with the resettlement. We have also disturbances in the sediment load and the fish migration. We have heard it in the morning also. And each reservoir, also based on the European water Richtlinien guidance, thank you, that means the degradation of the water quality, because each slowing of the water flow is degradation. And last but not the least is also the water in the reservoir. We will have the losses. One of the losses is the evaporation, and in the last year there was a big discussion about the water footprint of the hydropower. Water footprint is the same philosophy as also CO2 or energy footprint of the project, of the product. This means how much water in this case is used to produce the product, and on this way I can compare the different products, and also it gives us the answer which water is used. Is it the rainwater? Then it's a green water footprint. Is it the surface or groundwater? Then it's a blue. And if it's polluted water, then it's a gray water footprint. Also, the hydropower has his own footprint, and this is in most cases the evaporation of the water from the reservoir, and this one divided by the hydroelectric production, you get how much cubic meters is used for 1 megawatt power, for example. The rest of other water footprint we don't have, because seepage, which is also lost water of the material from the reservoir, is just lost for the energy production, but it's normally coming in the same basin, and in this way it's not lost. And as I said, there is no water pollution. That means we have no gray water footprint. We in UNESCO IGE made in last year's research in this direction and found out that most of this evaporation is existing. This cannot be neglected, but we must be careful when we speak about the hydropower in this context, that the most of the cases we have multi-purpose use of the reservoirs, which means the power supply is not the first or maybe the dominant use, and because of other uses, also the energy production must be combined with all of these uses. Because of that, we want to say that we are for the objective hydropower footprint, and instead of saying is hydropower consuming water, we want to say is maybe hydropower conserving water, or reservoirs conserving water. And in this context, we have to look in case of hydropower, not only negative, but also what it brings positively with flood, drought control, and so on. And this is the way how the Hydropower Sustainable Assessment Protocol tries to do it. The protocol came out before 2 years and is now from this, we can say, first phase of in the implementation phase. And in reality, this is a framework which is assisting the sustainability of hydropower projects is on one neutral platform for the dialogue. This means I have on one platform all parts of the all parties of interest. On one side, from owners of the energy suppliers, designer, suppliers of the equipment, and on the other side, environmental, social organizations, NGOs, governmental organizations, and all of them have to work together and find the solution. As a guideline for the solution, 5 documents have been prepared, 1 basic background document, and for each stage of the project, for early stage, preparation of the project, implementation of the project, and operation, the guidelines, which defines the we think all important topics covering technical, environmental, social, financial, economical, and integrated points, but also cross-cutting issues like climate change, corruption, human rights, gender problematic, multi-purpose project, transboundary issues, transparency, and so on. As a result of this protocol or assessment, is a spider net diagram where with the marks from 1 to 5, each of the critical topics is marked, we can say. 3 is the mark which say there is no changing. I stay on the same level, relatively on the same level as I was. 1 means I made it much more longer, and 5 means I improved the situation which was before the project. These topics goes on the hydropower in large, for the big power plants with big reservoirs, big dams, where these topics are relevant. But if we move to the small hydropower, there its situation is different. Small hydropower is not a reduced version of large hydropower, because the small hydropower is mostly small units which are working without big dam, without big reservoir, mostly as a run-of-river plants, and producing lower amount of energy, but energy which can be used then directly to the local, on the local level. If we look to the benefits of small hydropower based on the European Small Hydro Association, it contributes to the sustainable development. It's, as we said, clean energy and renewable. If it is good designed, it's also not obstacle for the migratory of the fish. It's also not a big problem to solve the problem of the migratory of the fish, because we have no big dams. It is easy to achieve reserve flow and guarantee the fish life. It's improve the grid stability, local grid stability, because we have a local energy and the diversified energy system. The transmission losses will be reduced because we don't need to transfer the energy to these white places. It mobilizes also the new financial resources and local jobs, not only for construction, but also in the maintenance and in operation. It maintains also the river basins, mostly these small river basins, because you have at least the waste, the floating debris, solving the floating debris problem, but also each owner of such small power plant will also take care about the hydrology in the region, will help to improve the whole river system. And the energy payback ratio of such projects is very high, which means the energy which we put into building of the projects is much more smaller than energy which comes out in the life cycle of the product. Which types of the power plants we have? We can have a low head near the river barrage. We can have low head with a channel, or high head with penstock, and high head with combination of channel and the penstock. Some facts to get the size of the system: with 1 megawatt of the power plant, you can produce 5 gigawatt hours per year approximately, which is enough for 2,200 households in developing countries. To come in the area, I make it also as one small example for the Bangladesh. If we look to the Bangladesh as a country, electricity excess rate is approximately 41%. We heard in Nepal also approximately 40%. From this energy which is existing in the country, only 4% is coming from hydro, which is clear that Bangladesh is normally very flat country, like it can be compared to the Netherlands. There is only one hydropower plant with approximately 12% of the feasible hydropower potential, and one project I found is in planning. But east of the country is a hilly region, and there is in my opinion, reasonable potential for the small hydropower plants in this area. For example, the example of Bamechara hydropower plant with 10 kilowatt If we go to the slide before, this will be 200 households, but it's not, or 20 households, sorry, just. But it's, for the small village, it can be very, very nice solution, and it is. What we need for the small hydropower, we need potential sites which have a head and discharge, but we don't need the long studies because these are local structures. We need just the local topology, simple. For the beginning, we can start with GIS, but we can do it with the survey works locally. Geology is also very simple. It's not more complicated than for the normal house. You can say hydrology is normally the problem for the big power plants. We need 40 years recording and so on. Here, if there is flow record, it's nice. If not, we can make ungauged basins, check it with methods just from the rainfall, and which is very important, observations. The local people know how much water was in the river or in the creek during the last years. Connection to the grid is very simple. There is a direct connection to the local grid, and because most of these plants are run-of-river power plants, we have nearly constant production, which also is very good for the constant operation, constant production, very good for the local people. These cases are very environmentally friendly because these are just run-of-power plants. There is no any problems with changing the water regime or something like this. For the fishes also, and as I said, impact is very small. One additional possibility for the Bangladesh is also the hydrokinetic turbines, which are coming in the last years. These are the hydropower plants which are not using head, which are using just the velocity of the water in the rivers. It's something like a wind turbine in the water, and they don't need impoundment. There is nearly no environmental impact of such installations. They are very cheap, but they have disadvantage that they are low energy output. It can be maybe for few houses. As example from the region, also one project where I was involved is a hydropower plant Basochu in Bhutan, which was developed and financed with the Austrian Development Bank. And last, I will just show you the conclusions from the Sustainable Hydropower for All meeting like this one, which was last year in Vienna, organized by Austrian Energy Agency, which we concluded that the hydropower implies clean and affordable energy and can contribute significantly in the electrification of areas without excess of electricity. Hydropower means security in various dimensions and can contribute to the balanced, interlinked management of a nexus between water, energy, and food security. It's a flexibly optimizes in performance of peak power demands and other electricity generation technologies, and is essential part of the mixed renewable energy system. Is rehabilitation and optimization are the hidden treasures which need to be tapped. This means if we have existing power plant, we should put it on the newest standard to get more out of it, and needs to go the hand in hand and not against the nature, requires community involvement and public acceptance, and is hydropower development calls for innovative financing schemes and need to be supported through the international corporations. Thank you very much.
Professor Merentes, thank you very much for your enlightening presentation. Without doubt, it helped to round up our views on multifaceted views on hydropower. It was very interesting to hear about the remarkable facts regarding hydropower, which impressively shows the potential of hydropower as well as the challenges attached with. Referring to your elaboration on the debate between conserving and consuming water. I have to admit, we are not only consuming water here on the table, but also we are consuming a lot of time. Therefore, I want to move immediately over to Mr. Fraser.
Do you want me to move there?
Yeah,
Is
yes,
that
to
easier?
move. We can go to this side.
Or we change.
Yeah, you just change.
I must be careful by standing. This is good.
How this works?
This was my
Is this electricity here? Who knows how this works?
Okay, done.
Can somebody come to set up what? And to go to. No, but I need to on full screen. Is that full screen? Oh, full screen. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much on behalf of the Federation, myself and my colleague Hilary, to the Foundation and to the Forum for the opportunity to join you yesterday and today. I'm going to focus more on water and sanitation in terms of human consumption, and my colleague Hilary will talk more about food security and other issues as well. But first of all, there's a lot of misconceptions as to who we are. So just a little introduction to the Red Cross and Red Crescent movement. There are three components of the largest and oldest humanitarian network: the 187 national Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, autonomous in each country. And in South Asia, all the countries in South Asia have their own autonomous Red Cross or Red Crescent National Society. The second component is where we come from, the International Federation of the Red Cross, based in Geneva, but with offices around the world. And we represent the membership, the 187 national societies. We provide technical and programming support, fundraising, and do advocacy work at a global level. And we focus particularly on natural disasters and development programming. Then the third component is the International Committee of the Red Cross. Of course, they look after the international humanitarian law, the Geneva Conventions, and their specific mandate is working in conflict situations. So this is just to give you an overview of the component parts of the movement. And of course, what is a common misconception is that majority of our work is in disaster preparedness and relief. But in fact, the majority of our work is in developmental programming. So, what role can IFRC and its members take in the content of this conference? First of all, we are principally a downstream, community-based and rural peri-urban focused organisation in the majority of what we do. Auxiliary to government, but independent of government. And when I talk about downstream, of course, 90% of what we do is working at community level with people who are in greatest needs. As I said, the mix of humanitarian work and development is now being superseded by development, so our development programming is about 55% of our activities. The IFRC role: strategic, coordination, technical program support, partnerships and advocacy. This is an opportunity for me to advocate with this distinguished group. Certainly we have a potential to increase our role in regional cooperation. We've seen this happening in different regions in the world, and certainly in the South Asian context, because of having our membership in all those countries, we have opportunities to increase that role. If we have a quick snapshot of water and sanitation for health and productivity in South Asia, here's some, I've tried to capture just a few points. More than any other region in the world, South Asia, the negative effect of poor access to safe water and basic sanitation is mostly felt in South Asia, particularly in terms of numbers of people. The health impact is probably the single largest cause of morbidity and mortality, especially in children under 5. Issues of dignity and security for women and young girls, and reduces productivity. And let's go to the World Bank. They calculate it costs 6.5% of GDP in India, estimated at $54 billion every year, because of the lack of basic water and sanitation for the poor and the health impact that has. I must remind everybody, access to water and sanitation is now a human right. We've all signed up to that. So it's not a luxury, it's a right. Certainly when water and sanitation is not provided, development efforts are significantly reduced and productivity reduced. Increasing evidence shows that poor water and sanitation linked with poor nutrition creates a poor absorption of food, and particularly in South Asia, we are seeing evidence of child stunting, even if the child has enough to eat. If the water and sanitation facilities are poor, the child doesn't absorb the food properly, and stunting can be created. It's interesting to look at the needs in South Asia. According to UN Water, the needs for human consumption is only 8%. So the demand for human consumption, looking at the whole water picture, is not particularly high. Industry 10%, agriculture understandably 82%. But the benefits of providing enough water for industry and agriculture will be severely limited once again if the water is not available for human consumption. In other words, if that 8% is not achieved, you will lose ground, particularly in productivity and in health. So I've listed some solutions. Some we've already touched on, I think, starting from last night and today, but just to reiterate, certainly there needs to be greater advocacy across the board so that people know the relationship between water, sanitation, health, and productivity. Solutions can only be selective solutions in broad partnership. It's obvious. It's the only way to go. Intergovernment dialogue and IWRM has to reflect all the needs for the water and sanitation sector. If we don't have this collective approach, everybody will lose. Everybody will lose. Certainly, as my colleague said, and was said by other speakers earlier today, it's those most in need that needs to have a voice in how the problems will be addressed in the short and long term, unless we get over that. I mean, we see stakeholder analysis, stakeholder consultation, but it's very often top-down. And are the poor really being given a voice to what their needs are and what they think is the best way to address them? Certainly, there'll be a great need for greater government investment. Private sector role is welcome, but must be regulated. If there's not a pro-poor approach to providing water and sanitation from the private sector, they're only seeing dollar signs, and they're providing services to those people who can afford them, and they have the opportunity to make massive profits. I've got no problem with that. But unless the pro-poor approach is taken, and the poorest members of society benefit as well, we would be opposed to greater private sector investment. It can be done. I think the World Bank has proved that with certain studies that the private sector role can be expanded, and it can be done in a pro-poor approach. And certainly efforts need to be scaled up across the board, and it will take some decades in South Asia to see universal coverage. I estimate that in water, perhaps the next 20 to 30 years. In sanitation, it may take longer than that. So that's my main points, but I'd like to give you some examples of what we do at ground level. We feel that small is still very much beautiful, and if we do small-scale interventions, they are far more likely to be sustained. Where we are not doing enough is that we don't do enough small-scale interventions at volume. So we can find these small solutions at ground level. People are responding well to them. They seem to be sustainable, but we need to do them in a far greater volume. This is just an example of rainwater harvesting. The monsoon in South Asia, how much water are we losing because we're not capturing rainwater? Rainwater harvesting is not a long-term solution for the whole year, but if by increasing rainwater harvesting, it means that in the dry part of the year, you may still be relying on surface or groundwater, but at least during the rainy season, you're not taking that precious groundwater. You're using rainwater as you collect it. Here's even right down to the one household level, you have a small water tank there for rainwater catching. And in Nepal, we're also seeing an increasing use or reuse of wastewater. So water from bathing or washing clothes can be reused even for small-scale agriculture instead of just flushing it away. Problems of pollution, and particularly Bangladesh, of course, the arsenic problem. We've been working with other partners to develop this simple arsenic filter for household level. And of course, you know what the health impact has been of the arsenic problem in Bangladesh. But there are simple, low-cost solutions there, and that's the kind of things we need to go and work on in volume. Here in India, improving tube wells, particularly to make sure they're properly sealed so that they're not contaminated by wastewater at ground level, and we're increasing this kind of activities. I should mention that there'll be a high-level meeting hosted by the Indian Red Cross in early October in New Delhi, where a lot of international partners are coming together with the Red Cross to plan a massive scale-up in India. And any of you need more information on that, you're very welcome. And once again, household level, a simple sand filter, no chemicals needed. All you need is sand, gravel, a concrete box, and you can make a simple system to make water safe for the household. And of course, once again, my point is we have these solutions at this kind of level, but we need to go to scale. And here you see the same filters being now produced in mass. So that's my hopefully brief contribution, and thank you again.
Dear Mr. Fraser, thank you very much for the interesting outline of your work and the programs which are supported by your organization. The linkage between water, sanitation, health, and human rights, I think, is a very strong point you made, and a point which we all should keep in mind, especially the respective decision makers. I want to move on now to your colleague. Ms. Motsiri, please.
Okay.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I think all the introduction has been done by my colleague. I will zoom to what we do with communities, looking at improving the water harvesting systems, simplifying the processes. Food security becomes a very important factor in any life. So earlier on, I think in my edition this morning, I highlighted how important the communities are in the whole process of discussion about issues of natural resources. They are the people that live within the problems. They are the people that are affected by these challenges. Going to the International Federation of the Red Cross, from what Mr. Fraser has also shared with us, we've got the high number of volunteers on the ground who are the affected, who are part and parcel of the community. So in any of these policy discussions, communities also need to be on the centerpiece of the discussions and consultative processes. I will just give a quick overview, which I think we all would understand what are the facts and figures of what South Asia is and what are the challenges in food security and why does food and water become an issue. I think we saw from the presentation before that 82% of Asia's water needs is for agricultural consumption, and we've got high numbers of food insecurity in the area, which I think the challenge of hunger and malnutrition is very complex and multifaceted within the region. About 23% of the global population are hungry in Asia, which is about 336 million globally. I think India has got about 64% of preschool going children who are iron deficient and 26% underweight, which I think this is where we start talking of whether it's cross-border or whatever it is with our natural resources. There is a need to also go back home and discuss what food security is and how do we get it right. I mean, from even regionally political discussions are also looking at food insecurity. From a quote from the India Prime Minister, where we should not wait for anybody to come and help us to address this issue. This is a case within the region and it needs to be removed. These are some of the discussions that are going on in the region. And as we mentioned that the Red Cross, each country has got a national society, which is an auxiliary to government and playing part in issues around health, food security, and disaster management risk reduction. So with looking at what are the major challenges of food insecurity, it's not only food that we need, but we need to address a number of the food. What is it that we bring to the table? How is it produced from the challenges that we all have heard about climate change, the availability, scarcity of water, droughts, and floods. So one has to look at how do we bring the food available to address the challenges of malnutrition, where not only having the food that we want to eat, but at the end of the day is to improve the livelihoods of the people. And we also would look at education for improving this ability to be able to produce the food. And women become also a very important factor, or gender issues needs to be addressed in this whole issue. And social protection and how do we distribute the resources. I think each region has got its challenges, which I think would need us to discuss for another year. What are the challenges within the natural resources and equality of distribution of resources in different areas, for example, our land. But as what we said as the Red Cross, what we are doing from a developmental humanitarian situations, we make sure when the disaster happens, food is provided, but it was not enough to just provide food aid. What do we do when people, after the disaster, then we looked at the long-term planning of, that's where we are coming up with the sustainable food production, which is our food security program. They are very small interventions that are technically supported, and we don't do this alone. We work with partners, universities, and the private sector. One would say, is Red Cross a research organization? We are not, but we would work with organizations like the FAO and research bodies and universities to help us look at the best solutions to address food security. So our programming really is looking at increasing capacity on long-term food security production to improve nutrition and livelihoods, to improve program quality, which we also look at diversified technologies on how best do we get small irrigation systems in place, and how best do we harvest or conserve water, and what are the best varieties that can be grown, looking at also indigenous knowledge systems. And develop technical partnership, which I think is what we are doing here, sharing and discussing, profiling organizations to make sure that we understand what we all do and how do we bring each other to the table to make decisions and to discuss, support local capacity in policy advocacy and strategic positioning at all levels, especially when we are looking at communities being part and parcel of the discussions, and the gender mainstreaming and integration aspect. The issue I have shared with you one case study of one of the communities that the Red Cross has worked in. There are cases on the table. Take along, share with people. If you need more, I can provide. But it's really giving a background of a situation of a community that was affected by drought, and people were provided with food aid. But there was community participatory intervention where communities organized themselves working with the Red Cross and other line ministries like the Minister of Agriculture to come up on food security production, but also looking at natural reserve conservation, whatever farming methods or systems they were putting in place in that dry area. They looked at the natural conservation and also small irrigation system. And there were quite a lot of outcomes out of that: income generation. People were able to produce food to feed themselves, and women were able to attend to other things apart from only looking after the children and farming. So a number of lessons were learned that in these discussions of natural conservation, we need diversified mechanisms, we need diversified research, partnership is very important, and advocacy. And we also need to look at gender mainstreaming and the integration scope out of it. So in short, I just wanted to say, as we look at water as a natural resource, it's a very important factor that we need to consider on how do we produce food. For all of us to be able to discuss on hydro, water and sanitation, one needs food. So this is what we need to address. And in most of the countries, the food insecurity numbers globally are increasing, and we need to see how best we are doing it. Even in urban areas, people are being encouraged to grow food in containers so that people have their own food for themselves. Let alone when we look at food prices going up, it's even making people who have the money sometimes to reduce and to cut on the number of meals we have because we can't afford. So it becomes very crucial for us to make sure that there are some self-sufficient food security production. But at the same time, let's think of our children for tomorrow. How do we conserve the natural resources we have, which are diminishing? So conservation of water becomes very important. Thank you very much.
Ms. Matsiri, thank you very much. You stressed very insightful the significance of food security. Your elaboration on the challenges regarding food security made it clear which kind of task we have to deal with in future. Therefore, it was outstanding to listen to your case study, and hopefully we can talk later more about it. And in the meantime, I want to pass over the word to you, Mr. Marcus.
Thank you.
It's you find you?
No.
This technical issue reminds me on one of our core questions of the panel. To what extent can new technology and innovation contribute to fulfill more human needs using less natural water resources? Let's see how far they're really helpful.
Maybe I pass along the...
Yeah. Is your presentation ready, or you need also PowerPoint?
No, I don't need PowerPoint.
Okay,
I'll just
otherwise I would suppose a second change in the outline, in the program, and
do I need
would
to come?
like to invite Mrs. Hashmi.
Which one? It's already here.
It's all right?
Yeah.
You have it?
This one, yeah.
Yeah.
INCBIO.
You got it?
INCBIO, that's it. Here.
This one.
No, no, no.
Okay, so new technologies are under control again and ready to help us.
Okay. Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank Mr. Paul Kazaka for inviting me here. It's very nice to join this conference. I would like to talk not specifically about water, but more about the contamination of water and some cases that have been dealt with to reduce that contamination. And I'm going to focus a little bit on the challenges of recycling and how to avoid the trade-off between creating a mandatory recycling program and supporting the cost of it, that sometimes it's very large, or not recycling, and in some cases that's the only option available. How to balance the necessity of recycling with its costs that it usually implies. The focus on the projects I'm going to mention has been on recycling concepts that generate a profit for the private companies that are working with them. And this usually it's not very clear on the first take, but it can provide and create a big difference in certain areas. Water. I'm going to speak specifically about the contamination of water, and I'm going to address the problem of contamination with vegetable oil. Vegetable oil is it creates very high contamination. 1 liter of vegetable oil can contaminate up to 1 million liters of water, and in certain areas, I'm going to speak about them a little bit later, this is a very, very large problem. I'm going to give and discuss 3 projects, projects that have contributed to the decontamination of water or to the reduction of its contamination by creating a business around it, not by simply creating a recycling process. The first one is Oleco, and Oleco is a UK company that works in the HoReCa sector, the food service industry. And Oleco collects used cooking oil from restaurants and hotels and other services and converts it into biodiesel and sells it to transport fleets. This is not a new concept, it's done on several countries around the world, but they have one particularity that differentiates from the other companies. They also sell fresh oil for their customers. How can this make a difference in this particular case? Used cooking oil recycling is mandatory in the UK. There is a legislation that makes restaurants recycle their used cooking oil, but this is not very the system for the inspection of this recycling system is not very well structured. And to give you an example, if a restaurant has some used cooking oil in their recycle bin, inspection only sees that it is recycling and doesn't care about how much is it recycling, if it's recycling all of its used cooking oil or just a part of it. Oleco, what it does is to offer their clients a small discount on the purchase of fresh oil for each liter of used cooking oil they deliver. So they are actually paying the restaurant to recycle. And with that used cooking oil, Oleco produces biodiesel and sells biodiesel. So the restaurant, in this particular case, the restaurant and the hotels, in this particular case, they are making money from recycling, and Oleco is also making money from recycling. This is a win-win situation for both parts of this business. Oleco at this moment is recycling almost 50 million liters per year of used cooking oil in the UK alone. They are present in almost all the urban areas in the United Kingdom. They are expanding to other countries. And this very specific concept of paying their customers with a discount for new oil gives them the capability of creating a big impact on recycling used cooking oil in the United Kingdom. Another project I'm going to talk about is a company called Neutral Fuels. Neutral Fuels takes a different approach. They have a customer-centric solution. That is, they create projects only for individual customers. They are focused on large chain restaurants like McDonald's. It's their first customer. It was their first customer. And what they do with McDonald's is that they collect all the oil from McDonald's restaurants in countries where a collection service is not available. Their first project was in Dubai, and in Dubai there was no company collecting the used cooking oil from the restaurants, and McDonald's had a problem, and they wanted to deal with it. Neutral Fuels, what it does, they create a production system specifically for that used cooking oil from McDonald's, and delivers all the biodiesel directly to McDonald's to power their fleet. They create a solution, they have created a solution for this particular customer to use their own waste to reduce their consumption of fuel in their fleet. So again, this is a win-win situation for Neutral Fuel and for McDonald's that can reduce the waste on countries where this particular service is not usually available. They are expanding right now to some countries in Asia, and they have a large expansion plan for Africa, for a lot of countries where this does not exist. And I want to talk about another issue. It's another project with this in mind, and this is the one I think has had the largest impact on recycling. A traditional palm oil refinery, and I'm speaking mainly about Malaysia and Indonesia, they have a great amount of waste, and it's called palm sludge. Palm sludge is the part that is it results from the process of palm oil. It's mainly a combination of water and highly acidic palm acid oil, and this palm sludge usually is just put on a lake outside the factory or dumped into a river, and it looks very bad. It completely destroys the land where it sits, and up until now almost there wasn't any solution for this product. The refineries were not being mandated to deal with this problem. They didn't have an imposition to deal with it, or if they had an imposition, it was not very strong, so they didn't deal with it. Until a company, Green Energy Group, and what they do is that they use a new technology to produce biodiesel from this palm sludge. And by doing that, they solve two problems. First, they have available very cheap feedstock that usually it's not considered a feedstock, but for them it's a feedstock. It's very cheap, and they can have very a very highly potential business with it, and they solve the problem for the refineries that usually don't have anything to do with it, other than investing in very large investments in water treatment plants. So the companies did not have to make the investment. Green Energy Group is collecting this palm sludge for their process, and this is again a win-win situation. And this particular project in the refineries where they are collecting the palm sludge, it has improved very significantly the quality of the water around the plant. Sometimes this was on small lakes outside the plant, sometimes it's in rivers right near the plant, and this has created a very big impact on where they are working right now. They have plans to work with in Indonesia and Malaysia with all the plants they can work with. The last, and talking about technology we were mentioning before, this project can have a very large impact not only on waste but also on high quality water. Animal waste from animal farms is usually a very big problem because there are some options to deal with it, but we are always talking about high cost options to deal with it, or anaerobic digestion reactors that produce biomethane. This is a solution. It's also a very high investment, and usually the only options to use the biomethane is to produce electricity or heat. But the amount of electricity produced can only be economically and economically viable if there is a subsidize for the electricity production. There was a few years ago a very large subsidize in the UK for this sector specifically to produce electricity from biomethane, but that creates a cost to the country. There is a company in Malaysia, it's called Platinum Energy, and Platinum is developing, has developed a proprietary technology, a catalytic conversion of biomethane into graphene. And graphene right now is, I don't know, the holy grail of materials. It's considered a miraculous material. And they have a lot of uses for graphene. For example, a single sheet, a sheet of graphene with an atom of white, it can it can support the weight of an elephant. I don't know if that's very practical or not, but for us, what's very practical for us is the capacity for graphene as a filter. A graphene membrane, and this has been tried and tested, a graphene membrane, it's so narrow, the space between the atoms is so narrow, it can filter water, leaving behind all the salts and impurities. There are some interesting projects about graphene drinking straws that can be used anywhere in any kind of water. So when you suck through the straw, the water that comes out, it's completely pure, and it doesn't matter how the water was before. There are very interesting projects, not yet viable because there is the graphene production methods are not economically viable right now, but Platinum Energy may change that to produce desalination plants with graphene with a very low production cost in terms of the water it can produce. There is even a study by MIT to reduce, not reduce, but to remove missing the words, radiation from the water. It's a study focused on Fukushima, and using graphene oxide they can completely remove radiation from water. So this is a complete solution for water. So I think this is a technology that we must look for in the near future. And this is a triple win situation. It's a win for the animal farms that have their waste processed, a win from platinum energy, and a win for everybody who needs clean water to use. Thank you very much.
Mr. Marquez, I'm very much impressed by your excellent presentation on water quality preservation and recycling. I think you made it quite clear how much the different sectors must work together for an efficient resource management. Furthermore, I think you excellently underlined the importance of science, technology, and action. And I think this is very important that these things goes together. And I think your presentation was excellent to point this out. And thank you very much for this. Now I have the honor to introduce,
I have to use this.
to invite Ms. Hashmi.
Can you? Yeah.
Do you have your own?
I don't know. That's a good idea. Intelligent.
So I think we close the session of rotating chairs. Hopefully the last time for this panel. And please, Professor Hashmi.
Okay. Thank you, Cass and South Asia Democratic Forum for making me part of this very important, discussion. I feel that I'm the odd one here because after all these quite enriching expert presentations on the issue, what I'm going to do, I'm going to just discuss, a general description of the issue of the problem from a social scientist, perspective. So I would be focusing on the international support that is needed. Since morning, those issues that have been highlighted, and especially in South Asian context, there have been bilateral agreements and initiatives, but at the same time, there have been issues between the countries. So what is the importance and why do we really need international support in order to continue with this, all the initiatives that have been taken? I think when we talk about water, water is key foundation whose importance can hardly be overestimated. It is a common denominator of the leading global challenges of our time: energy, food, health, peace, and security. Water management can reduce the risk of disasters such as drought and flood. With transboundary river basin system representing almost half the Earth's surface, water cooperation is vital for peace. Nurturing these opportunities for cooperation in water management among all stakeholders and improving the comprehension of the challenges and benefits of water cooperation can help build mutual respect, understanding, and trust. What are the drivers? When we talk about South Asia, there are certain drivers of water insecurity. And they are not really new, but they are the ones which have been causing problems when it comes to politics of South Asia or regional cooperation. The region suffers from many drivers of water insecurity: high population growth, vulnerability to climate change, arid weather, agricultural dependence, economies, and political tension. Water security issues can have a destabilizing effect on regional and international security, spawned by globalization. The increasing economic and political interdependence of nations ultimately means greater potential for a spillover of problem. This is not to say that South Asia is devoid of water security stabilizers. If there are drivers for instability in South Asia, there are stabilizers as well. Its various transnational arrangements to differing degree helps the region manage its water constraints and tension. To understand the importance of transboundary water arrangements in South Asia, One must first bear in mind a paradox, and that is, of course, as we have been discussing, the region is poorly integrated. An argument is that since China, while not a geographic entity of South Asia, is an upper riparian for many of the key rivers flowing into South Asia, India is both a lower in the case of Brahmaputra and upper in the case of the Indus riparian. This means hypothetically that any flow diverting Chinese activities on Brahmaputra could alarm India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, and in turn trigger Indian flow manipulations on the Indus, with implications downstream for Pakistan. Such a dynamic creates a hydro domino effect. One nation's water policies can spark a chain reaction throughout the region. What we need a multi-level inclusive approach for water cooperation. Water resources management issues must be addressed at the local, national, and at appropriate regional and international levels. All stakeholders, including those in government, international organizations, private sector, civil society, and academia, should be engaged, paying special attention to the livelihood of the poor and most vulnerable people. All the while, social, political, and economic decisions must be made in a way that seeks to balance and fairly distribute the allocation of natural resources while keeping in mind the biophysical limits of the environment. Mobilizing political will and commitment to address water issues worldwide remain crucial. Equally important are forward thinking and a willingness to consider innovative ways to approach local, regional, and international cooperation. Open discussion of the issue shaping our water resources and strong citizen participation in decision making, as Subha also highlighted in the morning session, which is key to fostering good governance and a climate of accountability and transparency, can stimulate cooperative action and political commitment. Promoting a culture of consultation and increasing participative capacities will help to deliver benefits in all areas. What are the benefits if we really have to pin them down? Gains from cooperation can include the costs averted by reducing tensions and dispute between neighbors. Cooperative approaches to river systems can also generate political benefits. Cooperation at the basin level can promote efficient techniques for water storage and distribution, expanding irrigation average. The Indus Basin Treaty of 1960 was a precursor to the massive expansion of irrigation works in India, which in turn played an important role in the Green Revolution in India. South Asian nations, they need to focus more on demand-side solution to domestic water problem. These include water conserving technologies, crop diversification, better investment in infrastructure maintenance, and wastewater treatment, and a stronger embrace of rainwater harvesting, a conservation method that has already caught up quite strongly in some part of the region. Such policies are less expensive and potentially more efficient than traditional supply-side water engineering projects like dams, because the dam politics has been creating problems when it comes to South Asia, especially in my country, in Pakistan. And I think this argument has been coming from Indian side as well, that why don't you store your water when you get so much rain that causes flood, and it's waste of water that you've not been able to do that. So don't, really get into this sort of a tit-for-tat thing when India is stopping water or making more dams or bridges, and Pakistan is not really getting water. In India, there has been some debate about the merits of emphasizing sugar bean cultivation over that of sugar cane, which is, quite water wasting, crop. In the morning, again, there was some discussion on delegating power of decision-making to those who are involved. So this decentralized cooperation, which is the decentralized international financing approach, which was developed in France, is an example. In 2005, in France, it established a framework for decentralized cooperation in water and sanitation, covering 6 French basin agencies. Local authorities can dedicate up to 1% of their water and sanitation budget to international development program. So in 2005, around $37 million was committed. If other higher income groups countries were to adopt this approach or this kind of a scheme, it could generate about $3 billion a year by one estimate, an important new flow of financing for water and sanitation for developing countries. Some other programs or initiatives that have been taken internationally, for example, UNESCO's program From Potential Conflict to Cooperation Potential, PCCP, which is, the program was launched in order to respond to the Hague Ministerial Declaration signed in 2000, which identified several water-related challenges to achieving water security. PCCP facilitate multi-level and interdisciplinary dialogues in order to foster peace, cooperation, and development related to the management of transboundary water resources. Another is the convention, which is international law, and obviously on one side it helps, but on the other side it also creates problem for some. The Convention on the Protection and Use of Transboundary Water Courses and International Lakes Water Convention is intended to strengthen national measures for the protection and ecologically sound management of transboundary surface water and groundwaters. The convention obliges parties to prevent, control, and reduce transboundary impact and to use transboundary water in a reasonable and equitable way. Parties bordering the same transboundary waters shall cooperate by entering into specific agreement and establishing joint bodies. In 2011, UN General Assembly passed its Resolution 65/154, decided to proclaim 2013 as an International Year of Water Cooperation. So all these efforts that we have been discussing, bilateral, regional, and international, United Nations tried to institutionalize those initiatives by coming up with this International Year of Water Cooperation. The objective of the year is to raise awareness of both the potential for increased cooperation and the challenges facing water management in the context of greater demand for water access, allocation, and services. Bilaterally, when we talk about, some steps have already been taken along the lines mentioned, like for example, when I talk about India, Pakistan, and many other speakers have also mentioned Indus Basin Treaty. China and India have agreed to share data on glacial melt. International academic conferences and other forums facilitating the exchange of information about water constitute one way to boost water transparency. Technology sharing is another avenue. There is an example in United States. It has this metric system, a program, a new water measurement tools developed by academic researchers that has already helped resolve a fight over water in the Arkansas River and could simply be deployed in the Indus Basin. Similarly, America could provide satellite data that document water availability. It is sometimes observed that there are no international water treaties or other global mechanism to promote water cooperation. The international community's participation in water data sharing exercises in South Asia and elsewhere can serve a modest beginning. To conclude, I would say that political conflicts between nation and state over access to water rights is partly the result of unsettled questions in international law. 4 major approaches to water rights include absolute sovereignty, prior appropriation, riparian, and equitable utilization. The first 2, absolute sovereignty and prior appropriation, tend to benefit the upstream states at the expense of all other parties. For example, under principle of absolute sovereignty, a state can do what it pleases with its water resources regardless of any impact on a neighboring state. Obviously, the above principle appeals to upstream nations and particularly strong and powerful upstream nations. More equitable approaches to water rights are encapsulated in principles such as riparian rights and equitable utilization. Equitable utilization tends to benefit both upstream and downstream states, and especially beneficial to a weaker country. That happens to be a downstream state. Even strong upstream countries have, in practice, tended to compromise with weaker downstream neighbors in order to promote some degree of equitable utilization of water resources. So there is need to be recognition that water insecurity in the form of water stress or water scarcity is not an isolated problem. Its effects can extend to human, national, regional, and international security. Thank you.
Dear Professor Hashmi, thank you very much for your presentation. I think you made it clear how important international cooperation, multi-level cooperation is for water resource management. And as such, you perfectly linked our panel with the 2 panels in the morning. Thank you again for this. I'm very proud to announce that our panel is in time, which means we have, thank you for this, to all of my contributors, I think, presenters. Thank you for this, and thank you for these marvelous presentations. I think they laid the perfect foundation for fruitful discussions. Therefore, I want to invite you to ask your questions, raise comments, and please.
Yes, we have spoken quite a lot about international cooperation, but the intervention on hydropower raise also the fact that we need inter-sector cooperation, and that's very often is missing in many countries everywhere. Hydropower is a sectoral approach, and the intervention of this morning of Dr. Pandey showed that developing hydropower in Nepal with the Terai downstream means that you can jeopardize irrigation sector. This is also the fact, the conflict between Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan is also under this respect. Kyrgyzstan is using the dams for hydropower generation, and Uzbekistan has less water. So the inter-sector dialogue is certainly a key factor as well.
Mr. Sagar?
Well, congratulations to all of the members of this panel. I think we did learn a lot from all of you. Allow me to concentrate on a specific issue that that is really, working in my mind for quite some time. A small introduction. I did, in another capacity, try to mount a project on recycling of brown grease, which is basically coming out of restaurants. And at this time, we were having a cooperation with the municipal company, water treatment municipal company of San Francisco in California. And when we were seeing how could we mount the project, I said, well, but why don't you go to the company that is really the most, has the most technological advanced solutions? What is this company? And I asked, well, you are Portuguese. I mean, it is from Portugal. It is INCBIO. And I said, what? I mean, never heard of it. What is this? And I really had to go there. I did go. I did visit Maya. I did visit this young man, José Marques, and the way that he is doing, and I was completely, very, very fascinated and surprised how there is a new Portugal. Sometimes the Portuguese establishment does not understand what is going on. You know, there is a new Portugal that is really making things going in a very, very important way. And this is the prelude to my question. Really, I mean, I did, at this time, I Googled a lot of things on brown grease, and I did understand, for instance, India was a country where there was more things, more conferences, more debate, more initiatives from the Indian authorities on these sort of issues. What could be done by Europe in one side and by South Asia on the other side to put this issue of the brown grease recycling moving in South Asia? Where is really the deadlock? That's my question.
Thank you very much. I guess this goes to you, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Paulo, for those lovely comments. There are some things that can be done. Actually, the question about brown grease is being treated in several countries, in Europe, in the United States. But usually there hasn't been created a solution for it. It's only being treated as a way not to pollute the water. not to clog up all the piping for the wastewater systems, because it's a product that turns solid very fast. Only now it's starting to have a solution and converting it to another usable product. In terms of how Europe can help or can create a movement in India and in other South Asian countries to use brown grease, every country, I give you the example of Malaysia. It's a country that uses a lot of palm oil in the kitchen, in the food. And the problem with brown grease there is I think, worse than any city combined in Europe. We found that one single water treatment plant in a month in Malaysia has as much brown grease to deal with as all of Portugal and Spain in 1 year. The amount is absolutely incredible. So I give you an exact number. A water treatment plant in Malaysia has 1 metric ton of brown grease per day, and the 3 water treatment plants in Seville, in Spain, have 1 ton per month, the 3 combined. So the difference is amazing. And I think there are a lot of South Asian countries that can handle this. And the best way will be absolutely to collect this brown grease at the restaurants before it goes into the water treatment plants. If that saves a lot of problems, that saves a lot of time for the municipality to deal with the waste, to deal with the water before it gets contaminated. Thank you.
More questions, comments?
Thank you. I'm Mike Penders. I'm president of Environmental Security International and the Foundation for Democracy and Rule of Law for Regions in Conflict. I just wanted to thank all of you for the excellent presentations. Second, we represent a group of the indigenous people in the region of Gilgit-Baltistan who are very much interested in fostering a dialogue on watershed security for the Himalayas on a regional basis, to include sustainable best practices, human rights as part of a regional approach to protect the watershed and actually implement sustainable best practices. And I'd like to solicit your input to continue the dialogue as we're looking to organize this in Nepal in the course of the next 8 months with some of the people who have been here and related issues. And I just want to ask you, based on, Gilgit-Baltistan is the source of most all of Pakistan's water. Based upon your understanding, what do you perceive as the chances for success for a regional approach to actually implement some of these best practices and watershed solutions between countries that may be in conflict or have disputes between them? And finally, I'm familiar with the concept of peace parks, which have been extant in Afghanistan for almost 50 years now. And one of our concepts is to expand that into this region on a regional basis as a safe haven for best practices for natural resource management, to include water, mining, another issue, and habitat for the different species of this region.
Does anybody want to comment on that?
I think Gilgit-Baltistan, he was, Gilgit-Baltistan, it's, if you really have to compare the area with the rest of Pakistan, it's interesting that people are quite innovative. And not just that, although there have always been governance issues and lack of funds and the way center is providing opportunities and facilities, but people have managed to come up with their own methods and all that. But the point is, what we really have to see is there is a local government. Gilgit-Baltistan is still not really part of the mainstream political structure that exists in Pakistan. So what they do, people know, which is unfortunate, although we have come up with, with some sort of, measures where they've got their own, local bodies, elections, their own system and all that. But still, it is like there is this whole country, there is this system which is in place, and then these areas which are crucial for our own, survival. But still, they are when politics come in, politically speaking, they are still far away from the center. That creates a lot of problems. Because whatever they're doing for their own communities, that's good enough. When it comes to, the ownership, what they are doing, you own it, the center owns it, and tries to come up with the more broader solution for the country or the region, there is a disconnect. Which is unfortunate, and I don't know, but maybe next couple of years, we'll have some sort of, a political system in place in Gilgit-Baltistan which can really connect the center with all these countries, regions.
The challenge is this is a region that has a lack of governance and human rights violations. How you can move forward with environmental governance for shared values and the protection of natural resources in the absence of the rule of law or void of governance, and as a model, perhaps, for cooperation and building civil society and democratic institutions of governance, because the environmental laws all require a notified consent of those who are impacted as a building block towards broader mechanisms for democratic governance.
I think most of the things that they have learned, the techniques and all, is from the Aga Khan Foundation, which is there already working in Gilgit-Baltistan area, providing them technical support and funding also, which is an international organization. So in a way, there is sort of a direct connection, but not really a center, comes it, which can really help other regions of the country. So, thank you.
Are there other comments or questions? Otherwise, since you're talking about political context, this reminds me that we had a lot of discussion today morning on political stability, the border conflicts, bilateral relations, which are tense. This was mainly brought forward from our academic friends, and since that we have so many practitioners here, I'm wondering what their view is on how to improve, or what you see what governments could do to improve your work or to give you a framework for your work. What do you think what are the greatest hurdle, how they can improve the management of natural resources from the perspective of a practitioner who's really into the field?
Yeah, I must look at the title South Asia Democratic Forum, because I think that is the solution. If the international community and the countries in South Asia have a democratic approach to addressing their problems and serving, particularly from our perspective, the poorest and the most vulnerable, then it's a democratic process in which everybody is given their voice and can influence the government listens, and the governments are not only listening to those voices in their own country, they're listening to the voices in their neighbouring countries as well. That's the key to it. So it's democratic, or democracy in the best sense of the word, is the solution. Difficult, challenging, not impossible, and we're seeing, since the last war in Europe, we've seen fantastic movements ahead in terms of breaking down barriers between nationalities and different political points of view and so on. So of course it's achievable. And of course I think if the European Commission can influence and continue support in this for South Asia and other parts of the world in encouraging the democratic approach and seeing that there are solutions that will benefit everybody. That's the way forward.
Yep. Thank you very much, Mr. Fraser, for this wonderful, excellent statement. And of course, since I'm also part of the South Asia Democratic Forum, I'm very pleased to hear this. But I think here was another comment, question.
On the point that you have raised on environmental governance on regions such as Gilgit-Baltistan, I have worked on the other side of the border, which is Ladakh. You know, in terms of practices that the people follow, these are the age-old practices. I think we as a rest of the world, we have to learn from them rather than trying to impose what we consider as environmental governance. You know, if you have gone there and then if you have seen the way that they have used waterways, the way that the Afghanistans have been, in Afghanistan they have the traditional way. The way that they see environmental governance is what we have to approach, and not seeing them from a political perspective, irrespective of whether there is a political issue or a human rights issue. I think we should keep away from interfering in these regions. The best example is after we as tourists started pouring into it, you know, the concept of dry toilet has got converted into, you know, use of water, and that is kind of killing the local environment. You know, when water is it's a very precious commodity. The point that I'm trying to make here is there are certain sub-regions have developed their own way of environmental governance, and it's best we leave it to them. And the way that we have been doing is, you know, in the last 20 years, we go with these huge dams, trying to convert, you know, trying to kind of educate them with modern tools of environmental governance, which in the long run may worsen the situation than helping the situation. The second point, since I'm one of those minority, I'll just on regional integration on water cooperation, especially in the South Asian context. You know, I'm not convinced of the argument that for regional integration, that it has to go through, you know, water cooperation can be one tool of regional integration. Rather, it should be the other way around. After you are able to achieve regional integration, you may be able to take, you know, water governance as an issue. Otherwise, you know, as in the second session, someone talked about, time is of essence. You know, if we leave it, you know, I'm talking about as a farmer. If I leave it to the regional cooperation or regional organization to resolve some of the water issues, I'll be killed. My families will be wiped off. You know, there'll be multiple suicides. So many of us who talk about regional cooperation, regional integration through water cooperation don't understand what they are talking about. You know, Mekong could go to that level because there was an understanding at the ASEAN level. That's why, you know, you could reach that Mekong level. I'm not talking about regional cooperation through SARC. I'm just generally talking about. But perhaps the better idea could be an initiative outside the SARC or initiative outside the existing regional setup. We had multiple international initiatives outside the UN. You know, the one that I was part of, the international campaign to ban landmines, it was not done through an established organization. It was an initiative outside it. Perhaps water as a regional initiative could be done outside the existing framework, like SARC in South Asia. It would be much more useful than going through established framework, because it would not get us anywhere. And the third point is a question, since, you know, there are so many people here in the table. This is a question to all of you or whomever have worked on this. It would be a great lesson to learn from you. Since in South Asia, most of the water expenditure is on agriculture, we are talking about crop rotation to ensure that we are able to use water judiciously. But then the crop, and then how much we get out of the crop, you know, if we have to use. We have to ensure that income doesn't fall down. Are there in other regions is a successful crop rotation without reducing the agricultural income? You know, we cannot say you can't go for just 2 rotation in a year. You know, people would want to have that 3 rotation, I mean 3 crops in a year. but the rotation without affecting the agricultural income. Are there examples that South Asia can learn or people could tell us so that we can advocate as a kind of okay, after paddy, go for this. This will not reduce your income or output. That would be very useful for us.
I have a very brief comment on that. We've been doing quite a lot of work with Nestle, as you know, one of the world's largest food production companies. And one thing that was very interesting is the degree to which the farmers that provide them with the raw materials have been able to reduce the water consumption per product output or per agricultural output. They've invested quite a lot of money in this, and I was with the CEO from Nestle in New York at a meeting, a UN meeting, and I said to him, I was really impressed by what you've done to help farmers reduce the water consumption and increase the food production. I said, this is really very good for a company like you to do this. He said, I'll be perfectly honest with you, he says, I know it looks good in the media and everything, but it's good business. So I think in the private sector there are centres of excellence that you can tap into, and certainly the better reducing the use of water, increasing the agricultural output will benefit everybody. So there are good examples there.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Fraser, for your interesting, good comment. If you have any other question, comment, then please, this is the last chance. Otherwise, I would use this opportunity's advantage to be a moderator for some final words. I tried to combine a little bit our different presentations in order to get 2 or 3 common points together as something like a small message from our panel. First of all, I think smart use and management of water works across sectors and levels. Horizontally, across specific areas such as water-based energy production, water sanitation, and recycling, and food security. It is obvious that these issues are cross-cutting the sectors of economy, energy, agriculture, environment, and science. The smart use and management of water has also a vertical dimension, from international over national, regional, bassin to local levels. I had the impression as a political scientist there are strong linkages, but also certain trade-offs between water security, food security, and energy security. To address this challenge, interdisciplinary approaches and actions are required, respecting science, technology, education, human rights, and gender equality. Third, no single water management topic alone can solve water-related problems, as we heard. Therefore, we have really to emphasize an interdisciplinary approach and strategies. Finally, I want to thank all the presenters for their excellent contribution and the audience for the lively and fruitful discussions. There's no doubt that dynamics of change are fast and already led to remarkable damage of water resources. As a political scientist, I learned a lot. I'm convinced that our panel will contribute to an impetus in the direction of the smart use and management of water, helping to reverse unfortunate trajectory of the past. Thank you, and as such, I want to close the panel.